everything.
Mm.
Awesome. Okay. All right, I think we're live. All right, welcome folks to another episode of Agile Spain webinar series. Today we have a very special guest. First of all, before we jump into the whole mess, I just wanted to very special, thanks to Christina, because this was supposed to be like a meeting where we were going to organize how the session is gonna be, the questions, but it's end up being a completely Q&A because of my fault. So sorry for that, Christina, again. And thank you for being here. So for those people who don't know you, I don't think you need no introduction, but just in case that someone in the audience doesn't know you, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Christina Wodtke. I suppose the first interesting thing is how to pronounce my last name. I always tell people, picture a key made of wood and you'll be fine. Right now, I'm teaching at Stanford. I spend 75% of my time in the computer science department working with the HCI group and 25% of my time over in product design, which is part of mechanical engineering. And I write books. I seem to enjoy it, unlike most people, so I'm going to keep doing that. And before I went in, let's go backwards. So before Stanford was California College of the Arts, about a 110-year-old art school. I started teaching with GA, which is a teaching startup. And before that, I worked in industry forever. So a lot of social places like LinkedIn, MySpace, Zynga, did about a bunch of consulting with the New York Times, Yahoo, that old, when it was good. My students always like to say to me, Christina, it seems like you worked at a lot of companies when they were actually still cool. And I'm like, thanks, guys. So.
Awesome.
Students keep you honest, I tell you.
So they were not cool when you left. So
yeah, with me gone, how could they be?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's fine. All right, thank you for that, Christina. So just a little bit of housekeeping for the people on the audience. So if you have any questions, just please put it in the chat box. I'll try to do my best. I promise to collect them as we are having the conversation with Christina. But feel free to to chime in and put the question there. So just to start, Christina, I have a particular question, because for those people who are accustomed to read your books, especially Radical Focus and The Team That Managed Itself, it was interesting when I bought the Team That Managed Itself, how you frame the whole book like it was very similar to Radical Focus. Especially because at the beginning you tell like a fictional tale, and then it seems that you go to the business after that, just to try to make the concepts clear. How that came about? I mean, is that something that you have thought in mind and say, I'm going to structure the book that way because it might have more impact, it might get more effect, or people will understand it better, or was some kind of design technique or something like that?
Excuse me, I have a little reaction to the pollen. Don't worry, I'm not going to die during the podcast, but I may have a bit of a furry throat. I feel like nowadays you have to apologize every time you cough or sneeze or anything, but just pollen season. For me, I've been a big fan of Patrick Lencioni's books, especially Death by Meeting and The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And he did that. And I thought it was nice for me, but I didn't think I would do it, except when I was teaching at, I can't remember exactly when Radical Focus came. Was I already teaching? Anyway, anytime I gave students or employees 5 dysfunctions of a team, they got it way faster, way faster, and why it was important and why the ideas mattered. Much better than giving them a more traditional management book. And a funny thing happened after I wrote Radical Focus. Somebody was talking to me at a conference and they said, I get the OKR stuff, but there was something in there that really saved my bum when I needed it, which was I described Hannah saying, okay, I'm gonna have to walk you out now, when she was firing the guy. And he said, you gave me language for when I was gonna have to fire someone and I was so scared he was gonna take revenge. And something I've seen is that because fiction is sort of naturally nuanced, there's a lot of things there that that you don't explicitly say, that a bunch of different people can get different things out of it. With the team that managed itself, I decided instead of writing what's basically, they call it a morality tale, you know, something that's a little heavy and simple, like Radical Focus, I decided to go ahead and say, what if I wrote this as if I was writing proper fiction? You know, what if I was really thinking about character development and character arcs and things like that? And it'll take a while to see if people love it. It is 3 times as long as Radical Focus. It covers a lot more about what management really is. I think it's the best book I've ever written, but I don't know if the world will agree with me. That's the problem, is when you write something, you know what matters. And I do a lot of testing. I give tons of copies out. I often sell prototypes early on, but it's not the same as seeing how a marketplace reacts. So, sorry, my cat really loves attention. Except he wants down when he wants down, he wants up when he wants up.
Bring him in.
Sorry, big boy, coming in.
So great. I think that we were commenting this before starting. So it seems like for me, like the team that managed itself was more like a continuation from the Radical Focus at some extent. Was that on purpose, or is that something you wanted to cover more topics on the book, and you took advantage of what you have written in the Radical Focus, and created like another fictional tale addressing those topics specifically?
Well, the team that managed itself came out of the phone calls. So I've been writing, I kind of copied Eric Rees of the Lean Startup, his model, which is to blog about it for a while. And then as you have clients, to get smarter about it. And so when you're writing the book, as opposed to writing a book so you can get clients, you get clients so you can get smart enough to write a good book, which is backwards, but I think it's a good system. So I did that for Radical Focus. And then I had more clients, and they kept saying things like, how do you do a performance review with OKRs? And how do you do this? And I realized they saw OKRs as sort of like a giant, it will fix everything silver bullet thing. And I was like, oh, hell no. So I knew that I needed to write a book where OKRs were a piece of the puzzle, but there's actually 3 big pieces. There's goals, roles, and norms. OKRs is for goals, but then if you ignore roles and norms, then you're missing a huge amount of what allows a team to be truly autonomous. And Marty Kagan and I have chatted about this quite a lot, and it's not like OKRs will make teams autonomous. It's a little more complicated than that. So yeah, it's just when I went to write The Team That Managed Itself, I knew that it was part of a larger philosophy of management. So I don't know. I've managed a lot of teams in my life, and of course, I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by great thinkers in the space at Stanford, and I feel good about this book.
Nice. Yeah, I really like it, especially because as you were saying, I believe that the problem with OKRs is like now it's like the new Agile, I would say. It seems that all the people are adopting it. But one of the things that you were mentioning, Mari, at the when you sent the question, that we have the pleasure to have him at the beginning of March. We hope this whole pandemic affect Spain and other countries. And one of the important things that he mentioned is, OKR is important because of course you wanna achieve results. But one of the important things that he mentioned is the role of management. So it's like everything boils down into the role of management. So how important is management, either when you want to start implementing OKRs, when you wanted to transition once you have OKRs nailed down, let's put it this way, to start giving more space to the team to shine at some point.
Yeah, there's so much there that it's almost ridiculous. Like, we can talk about what's the difference between management and leadership, which people love to go off on, but I think the biggest thing to realize as a manager is changing how you think what the nature of management is. Like, when you first sit down to write a book, you think that you write books the way you read them. You start at the beginning and you write to the end. No, that nobody does that. You do some outlining, you fill some stuff in, you change stuff, you work at it. And I feel like everybody thinks that management is about telling people what to do, that all of a sudden it's on you. And if you don't tell people what to do, then things won't happen. And obviously that ends up creating micromanaging. So you have to management is a completely different job than being an individual contributor. So what you end up being instead is a coach, a facilitator, a visionary. There's different things you have to do for your team as a manager so that you don't have to manage them. That's the secret, is to get out of the management business and get into the growth business, the coaching business. So being a manager starts with trusting your people. And that's what led me to really think about roles, because we do a horrible job of hiring people. It's ridiculous. We just sort of go, okay, I got to hire somebody, but I'm really busy. So I'm just going to grab something off the web and change a couple words and throw that up. And then HR is like, how about these people? And you talk to them, but you're in a hurry and you really need somebody. So you say, this person's close enough. And of course you can't be autonomous, because then people also hate firing. So we hire too fast and we fire too slow. And so we want to flip those two. We want to start hiring very slowly, really figure out, what is this role? What does this look like? Maybe do a competitive analysis. How is this role held in other companies? How do we do it in different groups within our company? Maybe even do a bunch of sticky notes and a grouping exercise with the team. Remember, the team is going to have to put up with this person as well. It's not just you. So you get that information together and you say, okay, this is what the person looks like, right? And I mean skills and personality, certainly not physically. And then you want to go to the next level, which is making sure you hire someone who actually will be the kind of person who's going to fit into the team and grow the team. So you don't want to get somebody who's exactly like everybody else. If you've got like 4 white guys, maybe you want somebody who has a very different background, a very different point of view, a very different life that they've lived. So having a diverse team of people is really great. What I find makes diversity work is you have to have the same values. That's the secret. So when you talk to people, you're going to want to find out what really matters to them. What do they care about? If you're Philip Morris and somebody cares about health and safety, that's going to be a terrible fit, no matter how broke they are. Yeah. So you want to go ahead and do that as well. And then instead of throwing out the job description, use it like on your weekly one-on-ones. Like look at it and say, oh, is this person living up to this? Was this a stupid idea? Maybe I should take it off the job description. And you grow the job description until the person grows out of it. And then you can use this actually tested job description to hire the next person. And so that's one of the pillars, is having people you can really trust and you can let go because you know them. And then the other thing is just set up norms so that the various people in the team who maybe have backgrounds, like we were talking about how, you know, in America, Northern Europe, 1:15 means 1:15. And if I'm 2 minutes late, I'm going to apologize. Versus a Central America, I spend part of my time in Belize, maybe Spain, where 1:15 means anything from 1:30 to 2. You know, I used to be married to a Frenchman, and we were invited over for dinner at like 7:30 or something. And I said, shouldn't we get going? And he told me, oh, no, if we arrive at 7:30, they'll still be taking a shower. You can't do that to people. So, you know, you have to get everybody together and say, okay, what do we mean by on time? What do we mean by, you know, how do you want to handle confrontation? How do you want to handle differences in how we argue? Like some people are very conflict averse and some people just dive in there. And so this is partially country cultural, but it also could be family cultural. It can be where you grew up. It could even be companies. Yahoo was very passive aggressive, where everybody was so super nice that you had to like build coalitions. And then Zynga was aggressive. It was just in your face. So yeah, it's the thing.
Very spoken. You know, from what you were saying, I believe that, you know, if you go to any manager, any managerial director, and you say, hey, we want to use OKRs, we want to, you know, get the team manage itself, I'm pretty sure that they're going to say, yeah, I want that. But then in reality, what is going on is like, you have a lot of people who say that, who pay lip service to say, yeah, I want the team to manage themselves, I want the team to use OKR, measuring by result, whatever. But then, you know, when the rubber meets the road, it's not happening. I mean, what do you do in those cases?
I was going to say, when I talk to people, I always tell them that OKRs are just like the dieting advice, eat less and exercise more. It's very, very simple. and it's very, very hard. So that's the thing, is if you want to use OKRs, there's a fair amount of work to be done to make sure you're getting it right. And the other problem is, I think human beings are bad at thinking about time. So there's a tendency to like try to shove everything into one quarter, have an OKR that encompasses everything the company might want to do an entire year in one quarter, trying to create OKRs for every single sub team. And instead you need to say, okay, we're on this journey. Unless you're a startup, there's a special rule for them. I had started with that, but we're going to be on this journey for 5 years. What does a year look like? Okay, now that we are thinking about what our year looks like, what do we want to do first, second, third, and fourth? Like, how do we think about sequencing? And so rather than saying this is the plan and what we're going to do, it's more like saying here's a scenario, but every quarter we're going to pause and adjust it based on what we just learned. People seem to think you have to pick between being opportunistic and being strategic, and you really don't. You should be strategic, but you should always keep your eye on how to adjust that to changing conditions. And certainly COVID-19 taught us anything, you never know what's going to happen next. So having that combination of eyes on the prize, but on the other hand, being able to adjust is really important. But gosh, there's so many mistakes. I mean, in Radical Focus, I literally wrote a list of all the ways people mess up OKRs. They set and forget. The reason OKRs aren't the same as KPIs or SMART goals is because they have this rhythm of checking in, remembering this is what we're really trying to do, not getting distracted by life's little surprises, right? That's a really big part of it. And sometimes people get really obsessed with setting the absolute perfect OKRs. And I'd rather have so-so OKRs that we at least touch base with every week and it actually gets executed. Gosh, people try to connect performance review to OKRs, and I've never seen anything blow up as badly as that. People try to do individual OKRs, and I'm like, please do this for a year before you even consider individual OKRs. Yeah, it's untidy, and the other thing I try to tell people, we were saying it's like Agile, right? It's the latest hot thing. Yeah. But I tell people, please, for one quarter, try doing it the Radical Focus way. This is built on best practices, and then do a post-mortem, and then figure out what doesn't work. Do it with a pilot instead of the entire company, and then slowly adjust it for your culture. Because I feel like I have two kinds of people. People who either want to do it exactly how I say, and if it's not working, they failed somehow. Mm-hmm. And people who want to throw out everything they don't want to be bothered with. And I'm like, both of those are not going to work. You got to try, adjust. I mean, that's lean, right? Yeah. Always in a state of constant learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it seems that this principle that you were talking about, Eric Ries, before, this principle of thinking big and starting small, it seems that it also applies also to, to when you want to start implementing OKR. So when, for example, you go, for example, you're doing, consulting, you go to a company, you try to help them to, adopt the, OKRs. What are the steps that you see, for example, during the transition that you see, for example, the team, things that the team should unlearn, just to try to, phrasing Barry O'Reilly's a book. What are the things that the team has to unlearn and then relearn in order to achieve those breakthroughs, to say, all right, now we're focusing, we are not, trying to put everything in one quarter. We are not trying to find for the perfect key result, that is 97% of whatever. Any things that you can see, so people maybe that are trying to implement and, feel the same or going through the same situation.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very lucky because my full-time job is teaching. If I get somebody who wants me to consult with them, I can just say the truth, and I don't really care if they hire me or not, because somebody else probably will, and if they don't, I don't really care still. So what I care about is helping people get out of their own way and be as successful as they possibly can, which means I also only work with companies that I find are ethical, that I believe in what they're trying to do. It's just been something really important to me. So I've worked with a company that makes CPAP machines. I'm working with a company that does bioengineering to put more nitrogen in the soil. Like I think that when I first wrote about OKRs, I'd really hoped that they would help startups get out of their own way and make good things happen. And then, of course, I have Walmart and Altria and folks like that, right wing think tanks. And I just want to say that I'm going to talk about things a little differently because I literally don't care about being hired. What I do care about is that people do better. So there's some surprising things that have come out of it. For example, I always tell companies, find your highest performing team and have them pilot OKRs first. They always want to take the worst team and throw OKRs at them, but that's not what the point is of them. They're not going to fix a bad team. They're going to help a high performing team become better. The other thing I learned at Yahoo is nothing succeeds like success. So as long as you have a great team and you have a win, of people joining OKRs. The other thing, hiring usually smart enough and they're strong enough to be able to know how to change it for the culture, for the company culture. The OKR system culture fit is one of the biggest things I've seen for people. And sometimes if you just impose it from the top, the entire company will rebel as if it was a foreign entity in their ball. And I can't even tell you how many phone calls I've had where people are saying, well, we tried OKRs, now everybody's mad at us and we're going to want to try again. What can we do this time? And it's like, you know, start small, learn from it, try it yourself, and then move forward. Some of the problems we have is they haven't even instrumented their systems to get it. Like, you believe how often we have a conversation and come with these great metrics and I say, okay, can you get these? You know, and they're like, oh no, wait, we can't. So it's not enough to come up with metrics. You need to set them up and you probably want to get a baseline. So that's sometimes like before you do OKRs. Some people are impatient to do OKRs right away. And I'm like, okay, you can instrument things, you can make a guess, but you have to realize your guess is going to be terrible because you don't have any data. There's so many things people struggle with. The other one is it's really, really hard to use OKRs if you're a service team. If you're design or engineering, you don't always control very much of your goal. And so it becomes really important to say, okay, how much of our time can we own? We know we're going to be contributing to our product team's OKRs because, of course, we're all working on this thing that's either being evolved. Can we peel off 20% or 10% just to get better as a team?
Christina told me that she had some kind of Wi-Fi problems, so that may be the case when that kickoffs. Want to wait and we have her back. If you guys, folks, in the meantime, you have any questions, just please put it on the chat box. Hopefully we'll have Christina back in a while.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I just switched networks because one of my networks crashed.
No problem. Yeah, you told me that before. I was telling people that if they have any questions, that they feel free to ask the questions. Yeah. So you were saying, Christina, one of the things you were talking about specifically about the time. You need to give time to these people to try these things out. I don't know if you wanted to continue from there.
No, I'm good. I mean, if anybody wants to ask a follow-up from what I said, but yeah.
Yeah. So people ask in the name of your book. Yeah, the book is called Radical Focus. It's like a gold
and the
apple.
Other book is called The Team That Managed Itself.
Beautiful. I'm gonna share those resources and the links to Amazon so you can buy them. All right. So what going back to the previous the first topic that we started with, which was the more like about self-managed teams. I have there's a problem, Christina, that I've seen. For example, I have to be honest. I've been in very few cultures where the environment was like toxic, for saying in this way. So when you're
Lucky
in,
you.
yeah, Wall Street to be more precise. But when you're in an environment like that, how do you get the people to keep going, because it seems to be very difficult, and especially if you combine that environment with OKRs, when people don't care about results, they care about productivity, and they misunderstand sometimes the concept. How do you handle that? How do you manage that situation? Because it seems at some extent it's going to blow up.
Well, number one choice is quitting. That's not always possible, but that's like,
It's an option.
I mean, honestly, if you're in a toxic company, the cost to your health is just so high over time that if there's any way you can get out, that is always the best choice, I think. Not only that, but if you stay and you're a good manager, you might be keeping other good people in a toxic environment longer than perhaps they need to. If you can't quit, and there are a lot of reasons why people can't quit, sometimes it's financial, sometimes you're waiting to vest, there's reasons you won't quit. And at that point, it becomes really, really important to lead from wherever you are. So one of the strange things I've discovered over time is you don't have to have people to report to you. Now, if you're a product manager, you've already caught on, because nobody reports to a product manager normally. So you can't just tell people do this or you're fired. But to be honest, that's a bad strategy, even if you can fire them. Like, that's just, hitting them with a stick. So what you want to do then instead is to create goals that are incredibly motivating, and talk about why do these things matter, find a reason for them to matter, and then be kind with each other. When I was at LinkedIn, I was a product manager, and there were a bunch of product managers, and we were like in these little tiny, our own little cubes almost, I mean, literally two, I guess. And we didn't really talk to each other. The manager above us didn't really have team meetings or anything. And so I just said one Wednesday, hey, folks, if you're free, there were about 5 of us, let's go over to the sports bar. And we had some beer and said, okay, what's on your mind? And we just had a brainstorm. And pretty soon those Wednesdays became really, really regular. And basically I was able to turn a bunch of solo people into a team that was able to work really well with very little management. So I think waiting for a mentor to show up or waiting for a great leader or manager to show up is a waste of time. It's like waiting for Godot. I don't think they're showing up. So instead you have to ask yourself, how can I be the person who this group needs to lead? And it could just be asking really good questions of each other, like noticing, hey, Ben, you have an MBA, you really got a handle on this piece, or Chris, you've been deep in the algorithm, do you have some insights here? Because then you're just much more effective. And I think that it's really dangerous to try to take on everything by yourself. That's just not super viable. So I found when I have been in a toxic company, the best thing I can do is find a group of very strong people to make a team out of. And it's funny, but when I first started at Stanford, I don't know if you know this, but academics are incredibly, incredibly siloed. But luckily the lecturers, the people who focus on the teaching, are a little more of a team, but there weren't any women. And that was starting to make me feel weird because I don't have a PhD or a penis. So I was like, well, do I really belong here? Am I good enough to be here? And so I actually started a little coffee that a bunch of the other women in engineering and the sciences, we get together and we just talk about it and we brainstorm. And community builds resiliency. We see this in Women Talk Design as well. The social good company I started that's run by Danielle Barnes, we find that when we get a group of women together and they train together, then we keep going after the training with, and they're a support group to each other. And that's one of the things that really helps with resiliency. So I think if you're in a toxic environment, the best thing you need are allies, and you have to build a team out of them.
Great. Even though you're in a toxic environment, you can create, for example, like your space where you can do these kind of things, and not being isolated, but try to couple with that in a better way.
Being isolated is hard, as we all know right now.
It is. Yeah. We have a question from Angel. Coming back to the OKRs, he's basically asking. That's a good question. I think that you touched that before. How you can set OKRs for a sales teams, especially when a sales team is very attached to when it comes to performance, right? To meet the quota and these kind of things. You have any suggestion for that, Christian?
I guess I would ask, why do you want OKRs for this team? Like, what are you hoping to have? The question why always needs to be the first question. Sales teams, they're so extrinsically motivated in general that usually you just say, can you make this target? And they'll make it happen. But maybe you are struggling with a sales team that will sort of game any system, at which point then OKRs become really useful, because you can say, okay, we want these sales because of this, but while we're getting these sales, we also want to keep NPS high. And having those 3 KRs can often be sort of checks against the other one. So I often think about Wells Fargo, who said, hit this number, and everybody wanted to hit that number. So of course they lied, they created false accounts, stuff like that. But if it had been objective, we would have known why you wanted the numbers up, right? It could have been, we want to be the most trusted bank in the world, and the numbers go up, but also the NPS goes up and there's something else goes up. So again, I would just ask, is it enough to just leave your salespeople alone with some targets, or do they need something more because you need them to adjust behavior in a certain way, or you want different kinds of outcomes? OKRs are really good, but they don't have to be for everybody. Like, not every single team in your company needs to be doing OKRs. You can have people who are just doing business as usual. I don't want to give OKRs to the legal team. Why would I do that? Unless they were really slow to respond to my product people, and then I might think, well, maybe some OKRs might be a useful way. You don't have to have an OKR every quarter, or every year. It's a tool to stretch and to grow and to balance and to connect. But if you don't have those problems, then maybe you don't need them.
Maybe you're fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. One of the things that you were mentioned before, I mean, when you were saying, for example, like, I just want to use this example that Angel brought, regarding to the sales team. In one of the Mark Deegan's article, he was saying that I think that in order to avoid, trying to optimize something, that basically expense to other things that might hit that, because, at the end we're in a system, and one thing in one place can cause another reaction, another part of the system. He was trying to say, like, like a backstop, I think, key results, where if you want to say, try to achieve this number, but try to keep at the same time, not messing up with the other things. Is that also something that you recommend, just to try to balance anything, and not having one team succeeding and the other one poor over there suffering?
Oh God, no. Yeah. Well, there's also the question of, where are you setting your OKRs? Like, if one team's doing well, another team's suffering because of them, maybe you're missing an OKR that unites them towards a common goal. I would ask that too. So yeah, balancing the key results is exactly what I was just talking about. Like, in order to, sorry, let me see if I can get a voice back. So something I've found interesting is, Marty lately is saying there are companies that just should not use OKRs because they're so command and control that you really can't use them without a change in the psychology of the leadership. I think you could use them if the leaders want to change, but if the leaders are like, no, I just want to run things. I've had companies that I talk to and they only want OKRs because they think they can squeeze a little more productivity out of it, their people. And I'm like, no, that's just not going to happen, not what they're for. It's just, that's another thing. I mean, I went through a period where I didn't even want to talk about OKRs anymore because they were so badly abused. And then when I started working with nicer companies who were, willing to treat their employees well and really wanted autonomous teams, then I got back into it. But it's been brutal. Like, it's not even, like, there are a lot of companies that aren't necessarily doing terrible things for the world, like Altria, but there's companies who just want to control. And I really have to say, I know this is recorded, but I think BetterWorks is a huge part of the problem, because BetterWorks said they made OKR software, but it's actually project management software. It's all about tracking, are people working? And I think for OKRs, you have to give up that thought. You have to go, you know what? I'm not going to know whether they're working or not, but I will know whether or not I'm getting results. And it's not my job to make sure they're putting in their 8-10 hours a day. It's my job to just make sure that there's a vision set and that the vision's happening. The moment you want to control people's lives is the moment that you're a psycho and you need to be booted. Sorry.
No,
but that one's, that just, sorry, it just drives me crazy. Like people who want to.
But that's true. But that was, you mentioned before. I mean, that's because you have the cadence of the OKRs. If you want to know how people are doing, just show up when they're showing the stuff or sharing whatever, and there you will see. But the other misunderstanding that I see, for example, with OKRs is that people set the goals at the beginning of the quarter and then expect that at the end of the quarter they show up and everything is fine, and then you go another quarter with other OKRs and everybody's happy and they're celebrating them, huge. I believe that's not the right way, and I've seen a lot of people complaining, saying that OKRs they're not useful for these kind of things.
No. Yeah, I always joke that some people set their OKRs and then they hope that the OKR fairy will bring them what they asked for at the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't work that way. It's about the weekly cadence. In fact, I worked with one company that set the worst OKRs and kept changing them, but every week she came back and said, this is what we're doing because I want this to happen. And that weekly cadence alone built a successful business, even though she kept tweaking. She could not stop herself from tweaking what the OKRs were. And I was like, just stop, but no. So that weekly cadence is actually the most powerful part of the OKR. It's saying, remember folks, we said we wanted to make this happen. Let's keep going. And yeah, you can't scale. So when this whole crazy quarantine teach remotely thing happened for me, all of a sudden, like I said, I've got 2 classes of roughly 90 people and a couple of independent studies of about one's 5 and one's 15. And I don't scale. So I spent all my time working with my TAs, making sure that they understood why the choices I made were the choices I make, to make sure they learned how to lean on each other, to make sure they each had real ownership on an aspect of the class. And I think I'm doing better than a lot of the other teachers because I come from management, because I come from this autonomous team point of view. So you just never know when it's going to save your ass. But the ability to actually talk to people, to let them know when they're going the wrong direction out of a feeling of compassion and care and desire to see them succeed, or when they're going the right direction and you celebrate them because you're really happy for their success. If you have that right mindset, then there's nothing you can't do. It's just really constantly amazing to me how so many people in different companies are so scared of saying, this thing that you're doing, could you stop doing that? There's just terror of doing that. But that's such a big part of getting to a team that you can trust.
Yeah. I have a similar situation with my boss last Friday that I was saying that some of the OKRs that we were setting were basically more like a binary. So you ship it or you don't. So that shouldn't be, but it's important to have, I think, that this kind of conversation, because otherwise, if you don't feel like that sense of trust, and you are going, that what you're doing is not the right thing. And it's even more frustrating when you are not, have these conversations, even on your one-on-ones, or, any point or any opportunity that you might have.
And that's good by the boss. I mean, You asked me in the very beginning, how important is management? Well, the boss is who sets up psychological safety on a team. When you say to me, I have a concern, and you say what it is, do I say, oh, tell me more, or let me make sure I'm understanding you? Or do I say, no, I don't think that's a problem, and walk away? If you genuinely listen to people, if you respect them, and you say, okay, I've listened to you, and here's the reason I'm doing it my way, and I think that's the right way, and we have a conversation, I can still disagree with you, but I just spent time to make you smarter, give you an insight into how I think. That will make it easier to have a conversation later.
Yeah, I just wanna go back to that, later. But I just wanna, Carlos is asking about, he has a feeling he's basically in one team. Well, he's basically on a tribe. I assume that they were using Spotify at some point. They're saying that they are struggling to try to define like key results that are connected to outcomes, and it seemed that they always ended up being like I was saying before, maybe like either binary or more like an output thing. Any advice for Carlos?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is like one of the most common things is we're solutioners, right? That's our nature.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, we make stuff that make things better. So often when we see a problem, we say, oh, let's just build this thing. But we have made such a big leap. We've gone from A to Q and we've left off B, C, D, E, E, F. So a lot of times you have to have these conversations about why is that solution? So you can say, oh, why do you think that? Okay, what do you think that will accomplish? What do you think the results are going to be? And that unpacking of it will often get to, oh, you want to make that thing because you think it'll make customers look more loyal. Well, how would we measure that? How would we know if customers were more loyal? And then we get down to a key result. And then we can throw out the solution you wanted to make, or we can come up with 4 more, and we can go broad. And it gives us the ability to be a lot smarter about getting to that solution, because when you say, let's just build this, maybe 9 months later, you've built it and nothing's happened. So by really focusing on your results, it allows you to brainstorm and come up with different solutions. And then, of course, if you're working lean, the next question is, what's the smallest possible thing I could do in order to see if I can move that number, right?
Yeah.
And that also will save you time and increase your learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you might have also this question a lot. So, for example, for those people who have said, for example, the OKRs for Q2, and they were starting to define it at the beginning of March or whenever. So Guillermo is asking specifically for this kind of situation when you have to all of a sudden change strategy at some extent because your company you realize that you need to survive. Let's put it this way. And you need to do some things that were not on roadmap or OKRs. I mean, how do you handle that situation? I mean, when do you follow the process? When you don't follow the process, or I don't know if process is the right word, but
I don't know. Language is hard.
Language is hard, yeah.
Well, the first thing is the radical focus approach that came out of Zynga and then was refined through work with various startups. Before I started teaching, I worked with tons of startups and then kind of slowed down. But in that case, we have both the OKR, which is what is the single most important thing we want to make happen this quarter or year that we're afraid that life is going to distract us from. So no matter what, that OKR is still important, even if life is really distracting. However, it's balanced by health metrics. And the health metrics are the things that say, you know what, we might be going so hard after this OKR that we might burn out the team. So team health might be a thing. Or we might be so busy acquiring customers that the satisfaction is going down in our existing customers. So maybe we want to check customer satisfaction as a health metric. Or we're going so fast that our code is crap and everything's going to start breaking very soon. So that's another example, code health. So you have these health metrics, and anytime in your pursuit of the OKR set, you can call a code red, which means I am asking for formal permission from my boss, or basically telling him I'm about to go off the rails, and I'm going to go ahead and work on this health metric because it's more important. And then at the end of the quarter, when you're talking about your OKRs, you can talk about the fact that we ran into this really big thing and we had to stop for 2 weeks to rebuild some of the code so it wouldn't go down. And, if your boss is a good woman, then she'll understand and she'll be smart and get it. So that's one thing. With a situation like this, which is so big, that's one of those questions where you have to ask yourself, again, are we a strategic company or are we an opportunist company? Yeah. If we're going to be strategic, that means we have to find a way to keep our OKRs funded. And of course, you can fund OKRs with resources, with human beings, with whatever. But also we want to make sure that we're going to stopgap. So we leave them as is and we check in on them, but we kind of know we're not going to make 70% or 80% on them. We know we're going to like just barely keep things, the seat warm to move forward. But that's okay too. You know, these are not some strange outside goal that's been forced upon you as if you were in high school, right? You are the boss of your OKRs. Your team is the boss of the OKRs. And so maybe next quarter you have a do-over. I remember the first time a client said, wait, we could have the same one 2 quarters in a row? And I'm like, yeah, they're your OKRs. If you feel like you learned a ton in the first quarter and you'd like to keep at them for the next quarter, go to town, right? Because they're your OKRs. They're not my OKRs, right? Yeah. So here we are in crazy COVID land. Maybe this is a moment where, you know, suddenly instead of spending 50% of your time on them, you're spending, 10% of your time on them, and that's okay, you know? And then at the end of the quarter, you're going to say, what have we learned? Do we need to change them? Do we want to just do a do-over because we were so thrown off? Like maybe going into emergency mode taught you a ton of stuff that will cause them to be better OKRs next quarter. Yeah. So don't worry too much. Just do your best to at least not forget them because they were important for a reason. Yeah. Yeah. Don't think like your OKRs are like a Gantt chart that you need to meet. Oh God, no. Heaven forfend. I can't stand those. Yeah. That's I just want to say that we had that situation for one of the team had to work on one of the initiative because everyone went remote and we had to serve those people. So we asked, one of the team that was specifically focused on something changed their focus. But as you were saying, I think that this is the key point. So because we are, like a B2B company, like a SaaS company, we need to, recurrent revenue is our, is that what keep us alive. We need to, put that team to work on that to try to keep our recurrent revenue, healthy and stable. So that team, didn't have an OKR at the beginning of the quarter. I mean, it was just more like we need to put them to do this because for a different reason, and they're working like us, not separately, but in a different cadence or different cadence. All companies are different. Yeah. I can't say that there's any methodology out there that's perfect out of the gate for everybody. And I think that's something that, you get these people with Agile who say, that's not Agile. But I've seen something as small as just doing a stand-up make a difference. And I don't really care if they want to call themselves Agile or not, as long as they're getting better every day. Yeah, exactly. Martin has a question about, so we were talking about empower teams. This question is a bit tricky. How much do the team is involved defining the OKRs? That varies a lot from company to company. The best practice, the place to start. Sorry, one more time. So the best place to start is doing a call out. Let's say it's like 2-3 weeks before the end of the quarter, right? And you say, okay, folks, what do you think the next quarter's objective should be? And you could ask the whole company if it's a small company, or you can ask a division, or you can ask a good-sized team that are interlocked, but ask them what they think it is. Don't ask them about key results yet, possibly not at all. But you could say, what do you think the most important thing is that we should be doing next quarter? And then you take that to the managers, and then they should go ahead and have a meeting where they take those ideas in and then adopt them. And then you have to ask yourself, what are the key results? And key results are remarkably difficult, even if you're a very, very data-driven company. So first you have to ask yourself, what is the metric that will matter? Don't put a number on it yet. Just ask yourself, what is the metric that will move that you actually allows you to know whether or not you're making progress? And then when you've decided on those metrics, maybe there's 1, maybe there's 2, maybe there's 5. I try not to get more than 5 because a lot of the things that make OKRs work is memory. And if you can't remember all the OKRs, you're not going to act on them. So fewer is always better. But then you come up with the key results for the objective. You take it back to the teams, those managers, and say, okay, here's our draft. If you have any issues with it, please let us know. And then boom, you're ready to head into them at the quarter. The biggest, saddest thing I've seen is companies that take so long to approve OKRs, which again is command and control. It's not what OKRs are about. That it's like a month into the quarter by the time that everything's been approved. And I do know of a company, a very large company, that was doing that. And it was just heartbreaking because people would aim for something that took 3 months to do, and they'd suddenly find themselves with 2 months or less to do it, just because the approval systems were just ridiculous. And I take some responsibility for that, because when I wrote Radical Focus, I was really working with startups. And so Radical Focus was for startups, and you can cascade OKRs in a startup easily because there's only one level to cascade to. But when you're talking about a big company, which I've worked with a ton now, it's really about alignment. And you have to trust your teams to make good decisions, and just, don't get in the weeds. Just trust them to make good choices.
But let me try to add something to this, because you were saying that it's good to ask people. This one thing I would like to add. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not that you are gathering every single quarter and you sit down on the table and say, all right, guys, what are we gonna do next quarter? Please don't do that. I mean, there's supposed to be a strategy that you should know, and based on that is when you come up with the objectives and the key results. I mean, because I've seen that people think that OKRs are arbitrary, and you come up and have a crazy idea and go there, and then people get frustrated because the OKRs that don't fit into the next quarter. But there should be a strategy that it's clear for everybody, has been communicated, and based on that you create your objectives and key results.
OKRs are part of a larger system. I often say an objective is a mission for 3 months, and a mission is an objective for 5 years. So if you have an actually useful company mission with maybe even ways you could measure it, I never see anybody do that, but it occurs to me that might be useful, and you have a strategy about how to achieve that mission, then you can put in the OKRs as your plan of how to try to get there. And of course they can be changed as you get more information, but yeah, you can't, the thing I love about having everybody suggested is hopefully some of them are going to say lame things because they're not really paying attention, but other people will go, well, your strategy is this, what about this? This is something I really see is important. And I remember at Zynga, we had OKRs that came from, QA, and they just had a really great idea. The manager took it to the managers, and we would use them because the teams in the front line, they're really smart. And if you communicate your strategy clearly, they're often the people who know best what would move the needle, right? But it's all about talking to people. You have to over communicate. Jeff Weiner, my old boss, used to say, when you're tired of saying it, people are starting to hear it. So you just got to live with repeating yourself a lot. And that's okay.
Fantastic. Before we leave, because we are like 10-12 minutes before the end of the hour, I just wanted to
I'm back to back, so
no, absolutely. I mean, I just want to quickly go back to the thing that you were saying before about teams, about psychological safety managers. I mean, you one of the things that you basically emphasize on the team that manages itself is like you need basically three things. It's about setting, for example, the expectations, giving good feedback, checking against goal, which is of course OKRs, and then learning as a team.
Yes.
And in one of the talks of Mind the Product, I think that you talk about the different levels, right? You talk about the work group team, learning team, and mindful team. Could you please shed some light on what for you it's a learning team, and how we can foster that into organizations when we wanted to have teams that manage themselves?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a work group is easy because they're just a bunch of individuals, maybe sales or customer service, where they're basically working autonomously with one boss above them. But then once you start becoming a team, it means that you're interdependent, that your success depends on each other. And learning team is simply a team that consciously finds ways to learn faster and spread that knowledge throughout the company faster. So what I think is great about this rhythm is at the end of every quarter, you're going to do a formal retrospective. You're already doing these little tiny ones every week because you want to shorten the feedback cycle. Annual reviews are the most useless, moronic things on the planet because the feedback cycle is too slow and it just disrupts the entire company because people freak out. So I much prefer the weekly quick feedback cycle, the one-on-ones, the commitment meetings, the celebrations, those little tiny quick feedback things that let you improve over time. But then you have to also stop at the end of the quarter and formally say, okay, this is what we did. Why did it not work? What did work? What have we learned? Slowing down and formally reflecting. And I got to say, since I started teaching, I've read gazillions and gazillions of literature, from deeply researched learning literature, and reflection's a huge part of that. So when you sit down and you say, okay, here's what we learned, and you formally write it up, maybe you put a deck to share with the rest of the company, that's going to be one of the most valuable things you do, not just for the rest of the company, but for yourself. Our long-term memory can hold endless amounts of stuff. The problem is retrieval. It's picture an attic that's full of 50 years of crap, you know, like my brain. Like the idea that I can find anything is a miracle. So what I have to do is I have to practice retrieval to those big ideas over and over again. And so the act of writing it down, telling it to other groups, those are retrieval activities. And those are the things that are going to let you remember it. And the advantage of that is Q1, you've learned a ton about customer satisfaction retention. And then Q2, you learn a ton about conversion, but you haven't forgotten about satisfaction. It's part of your brain now. So now we have, oh my God, we have retention and we have conversion. And then Q3, we work on acquisition. We still know about conversion. And we become a smarter and smarter company, a more capable company, because we are layering this knowledge as the OKRs let us move into the next stage, and we can build a more robust company. And that's why I talk about sequencing all the time. If you think about what you do in the order you do it, like, why would you work on acquisition when everybody who came to your product went yuck and went away and will never look at it again, right? So you really have to think about, how do I slowly build up this knowledge, this understanding that will allow us to be the most successful company that's possible.
Got it.
How was that? Was that the answer?
I think so. Yeah. We have another question, but we are not going to have time. But hopefully, Juan, I got a question.
I don't know if you know this, but Mind the Product Hamburg has been moving to online, but my workshop will be provided online, and because it's online, it'll probably be more. It won't sell out as easily. So keep your eyes open for that, because I know some of you would love to know more about this beyond 1 hour. So that might be your thing.
I mean, Juan was specifically asking about how you make the team actually feel that they have this power. And, I think this is there is a talk, I think, that you gave at the Lean Product Meetup when the title was, how do you influence teams, without authority? And I think that I'm going to also put that. So, sorry, Juan, that we are not able to answer your question, but I wanted to give you, Christina, these two last minutes. If you want to, tell people about, you mentioned Mind the Product, that you're going to be there. Any other thing, resources, books, anything, blogs, podcasts that you recommend to get deeper, either in OKRs or self-management?
Well, as much as I adore my books, if you're going to read one book, I would recommend reading The Fearless Organization by Amy Edmonton. She's the woman who's been first identified psychological safety as a really important piece of a healthy team. Her book is so readable. It's so nice when somebody is both a very robust researcher and a good writer. So that's the book that I tell people to read, because honestly, none of this works without psychological safety. And psychological safety, to sort of gesture toward the question was asking, is knowing that you can tell me when I'm wrong. Like, I'm really badly dyslexic, and I write things on the whiteboard. And the day that a student corrects my misspellings, that's when I know I've created psychological safety, because they're not afraid. I'll say thank you. And that's how you make people safe. If somebody says, what should we do? You can say, hey, what do you think we should do? And you can listen, you can go, okay, well, have you thought about this? And they can say something, you go, okay, go do that, I'm done. My work here is finished, because what you want to do is aim to be able to take long naps under your desk someday. So try to get your teams as autonomous as possible.
Hopefully, give that book to your boss if you think that he needs some kind of, understand a little bit of psychological safety as well.
Yeah. If you turn off the recording, I'll tell you the little secret about that book.
Absolutely.